Hello everyone! I wanted to talk to you guys today about all of my 5-star reads of 2024, aka all the books that I think you must add to your 2025 TBR because these were absolutely amazing and I loved them with my entire heart and soul. So I want to share that love with you. I had 19 books total that I gave 5 stars to, so let's go ahead and get into them. The first book we have is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This book had been on my TBR for so long before I was gifted this copy, and it was absolutely amazing. I had no idea where the story was gonna go, but it left me reeling in the best way and absolutely sobbing. Definitely have tissues ready for this one. So this book follows Macy and Elliot. They are neighbors at Macy and her dad's vacation home. This book starts when they're really young and you kind of see their dynamic grow together as two kids who are just having fun and are trying to make friends. And you kind of see their friendship blossom into something more. This book also has then and now timelines. So we see the past of all this happening and then we get the present timeline, which Macy is with someone else. We don't really know what happened to her and Elliot. And she ends up kind of meeting up with him again in the present timeline accidentally, and it kind of sets things off. We end up seeing what's gonna happen to them now and what was the big conclusion that drew them apart in the past. This book was absolutely heartbreaking. I loved the friendship that was in here though. I think this talks about some very difficult and real things. I would definitely recommend you pick this one up. On a lighter note, we have 2 books that I was hesitant to pick up because I heard them raved about so much that I thought they cannot possibly live up to the hype. Everyone and their mother is talking about them. There's no way they're this good, and they were. And that was Caraval and Legendary by Stephanie Garber. I did read the whole Caraval trilogy, and I loved all of it. I think the whole series itself is a 5-star series. However, these 2 books in particular were the ones that I gave 5 stars to individually. I think that this series is so unique. It's YA. It almost gives kind of like gothic spooky vibes, because not only did it have fantasy, it also had romance and mystery, and we get the story of 2 different sisters in it who are so vastly different that I think the perspectives in here were amazing because of how different the 2 sisters were. It was unlike any other book I've ever read. I did not know what to expect from this. In the time that I wasn't reading these, I was coming up with theories for who Legend was and what was gonna happen next in these books. Every time I was incorrect, I will say that. This book follows Scarlett and Donatella. They're sisters and they don't have the best family situation. Scarlett has been obsessed with Caraval all of her life. Caraval is like this magical show that's put on by Legend where you're kind of competing. You don't know what's real, you don't know what's not real. He is full of magic, and whoever ends up winning this kind of competition mystery ends up getting to have a wish granted by Legend. It has always been Scarlett's dream to go to Caraval, and she and Donatella finally get to go, only as soon as they get there, Donatella is kidnapped, and it is Scarlett trying to figure out where she is, who Legend is, what to do. It's kind of hard to explain because at the same time, I did not know what was real and what wasn't real in this. And it ends up progressing so much further in the rest of the series. If you haven't picked them up yet, you definitely need to. The next book is absolutely another tearjerker, and it's Magnolia Park's Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. This book is the perfect conclusion, I think, to the Magnolia Parks series, or to the Magnolia Parks section of this series. I will say I was a Daisy hates girly through and through this entire series. The first book really put me off, and I didn't know if I was going to continue the series. After that one, I wasn't very invested in her and BJ's relationship, but this book is kind of what really made me believe in them more. I definitely did enjoy Magnolia and BJ's second book more than the first one, but this was just so amazing. It talks about so many different things. It talks about grief, it talks about loss, it talks about questioning your purpose in the world and what's gonna happen like after you die, what's the point of it all, heartbreak, romance, like it just has everything in it that I could have possibly wanted. The monologues in this book, top tier. I literally was highlighting like pages of this in my Kindle, and I can't wait to go back through now that I have physical copies and actually get to annotate them, because like every other page is getting annotated in this book. It's just that fantastic and has some of the most beautiful quotes in it that I can't even believe are real. Like, how did someone think up the masterpiece that is the soliloquies in this? I don't even know if soliloquies is the right word, but it sounds like it would be appropriate for something this beautiful. The next book, I think you either love it or you hated it. I don't think there was really an in-between, and that is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This book, I really was hoping I was gonna be obsessed with, and then I read it, and I think I read it in like a day. I could not put this book down. I was so completely obsessed with their relationship in this. It's like enemies to lovers. She's a vampire. He's a werewolf. It follows Misery. She is like the daughter of the leader of the vampires in this modern world where there's vampires, humans, and werewolves, and they all kind of stay in their 3 separate sections, but they're kind of teetering on the boundary of peace. And so to kind of save relations between them, especially between the vampires and the werewolves, Misery has to go and live with the werewolves, and the werewolves have to send someone who's like also important to them to live with the vampires, kind of showing that mutual trust that they have between each other. Misery, being the daughter of the vampire leader, has to marry the alpha of the werewolves, Lo. The tension in this book was amazing. I absolutely loved the way that this couple interacted, and just everything that was in this. It even kind of gives a single dad type of vibe. Not that Lo is a single dad, but he's very protective of this young girl that he's kind of helping to raise. I just thought that it was done so well, and this was my first kind of paranormal romance, kind of not fantasy, and I definitely want to read more books like this. I also think it's part of kind of the Omegaverse, which I still don't quite understand what that even is, but if it's anything like this book, I need to research more into it. The next books we have are also part of a series that I would consider a 5-star series, again for me, but these 2 books in particular, I gave 5 stars, and that is Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This is like the follow-up series to Caraval, and it is absolutely fantastic. It definitely is a different vibe from Caraval. If you didn't really like the mystery or kind of the more gothic, like darker vibe overall, I think that you would like this series. It's definitely more fairy tale-esque, but not in an unserious way. I still felt like this had pretty high stakes. This book follows Evangeline and Jax. Evangeline's, I think, like cousin, maybe someone she knows, is going to marry the boy that she loves, that she thought she had something special with. And so she makes a wish to the Prince of Hearts, Jax, which if you have read the Caraval series, we get introduced to him in Legendary, and he was just delightful. I was absolutely obsessed with him, and we get so much more of him in this series, of course, because he's our MMC, and everything he does is just to die for. I'm absolutely obsessed with this man. And Evangeline, I think, starts out being this character that you don't think is super strong. Obviously, when this starts out, she's going through a heartbreak and she's upset. She's doing anything she can to try to get this man back. And things just don't really go her way. She's a little bit naive, but I think as this progresses, she gets to be such a strong and independent character and really fights for what she wants. And I ended up adoring her character so much. Next, let's talk cowboys, because first off, we have Cade Eaton. Hello? This man is absolutely amazing. I love him. And not only is he amazing, but Willa, our FMC in this book, is such a firecracker. I'm absolutely obsessed with her. She's the kind of person that I don't think I could ever be because I don't have that much confidence, but I would absolutely need to be best friends with her. This book follows Willa and Cade. Cade is a single dad and he is a bit older than Willa, 13 years older than her. And she ends up getting reluctantly hired by him to be the nanny for his son. And it kind of just follows them. She's a live-in nanny, so obviously she's there all the time. They have this attraction to each other, even though he is so grumpy and does not want to be attracted to her. So there is so much tension between them. I felt like the son in this book was done so well. I can't remember his name. But I feel like sometimes it's hard to have realistic children in books. They either act too young or act too old or say things and you're like, there's no way a 5-year-old would be saying this. That sounds like something a 13-year-old would be saying. But this one I felt like was so realistic and I absolutely loved it. And their relationship just ends up being chef's kiss. But not only do we have him, we also have Theo in the 4th book of the Chestnut Spring series. And Theo Silva, what a man. In this group of friends in the Chestnut Spring series, Theo is younger and he's kind of known as being the one who is a golden retriever, a goofball. He doesn't really take anything seriously. They don't take him seriously. He's also a bull rider. He ends up having a one-night stand with Winter, who is Summer in the 1st book of the Chestnut Springs' sister. We kind of know that there's some animosity between the two sisters, and I think that this book did such a good job of diving into Winter's character, because in Flawless, I feel like we don't really like her that much. We know that she's done some things to Summer that are kind of harsh and have definitely hurt Summer, and I think it was so interesting to get her perspective in this book. She's known to be a little bit more standoffish. She isn't super emotional. She's kind of known for being like rude and just not very welcoming, but it's like reverse Grumpy Sunshine. She's the standoffish one. She's kind of the grumpy one. Theo's the golden retriever. They have this one-night stand and then there's an accidental pregnancy. And the way that this was handled was done so well. I loved every part of it. Even if you don't like the accidental pregnancy trope, I think that you could really, really enjoy this book. So I would definitely not let that deter you. It's so good. Next, we have a book series where not only is the series as a whole 5 stars, but each individual book I also gave 5 stars to. And that is, of course, the Boys of Tommen series. If you know anything about me, you know that I love to recommend these books because I think that they are just some of the most beautiful books I've ever read, some of the deepest books I've ever read that deal with some of the realist issues, but yet tell some of the most beautiful love stories. And it wouldn't be a video without me recommending them because I absolutely loved every single one of these. The first 2 books, Binding and Keeping 13, follow Johnny and Shannon. Shannon is this girl that's kind of been picked on her whole life. She definitely has a rough family life, which kind of gets dove into a little bit in these books. Shannon ends up having to transfer to kind of this prep school where she ends up meeting Johnny, who is this up-and-coming star in the rugby team. And he's also kind of recovering a little bit from an injury, and we get to see him kind of dealing with some of the things that he's going through, her dealing with her very tragic school life with being bullied again at this school. Just how their relationship is, it is so sweet. Johnny is so protective of her, but she just has such a tragic backstory and such a tragic family life that I think that it is so beautiful how they found each other and how they support each other and protect each other. I loved this so much. The next books are Saving and Redeeming 6. These books follow Joey, who is Shannon from the first 2 books, her older brother, and Afa, who is Joey's boss's daughter. These books definitely have a bit of an older vibe. I feel like the first 2 books I definitely consider some of the sadder books, and it just has such a cute relationship. I feel like this relationship is definitely harder fought and not depressing in these books, but I think they deal with a lot deeper, a lot darker, I guess, topics in them. And I think they're also both done so well. I absolutely love Afa, our FMC. She is such a firecracker. She goes after what she wants. She fights for her relationship. She doesn't take any crap from anybody. And I think that these were just done so absolutely well. And Joey, I just want to give him the biggest hug ever because he goes through so much being the older brother in this family that has so many different things going on with it. And the way that he handles being an older brother and the things that he feels and has to go through are absolutely heartbreaking, but seeing him fight so hard to get through them is just one of the most touching stories I think I've ever read. And then the last book that is out so far in this series is Taming 7. I know some people didn't like this one as much as the others, but I still gave it 5 stars. I think that this book was a little bit different than what I anticipated it to be and what other people had kind of played it up to be whenever they were waiting for it to release. But for the direction that Chloe Walsh took it, I think it was absolutely phenomenal. This book follows Claire and Gibbsy. Gibbsy is known to be the lighthearted, jokester player, kind of doesn't take anything seriously, best friend of Johnny, our MMC from books 1 and 2. And Claire is one of Shannon's best friends, also from books 1 and 2. And she's kind of known for being the sunshiny, good girl, always sweet, always friendly. We end up finding out so many different things about Gibbsy in this book, and that's who it kind of primarily focuses on, and him and his relationship with Claire. You kind of get the feeling in the other books that they do have something romantic going on, even though they say that they're just best friends. And this kind of dives into their feelings for each other and also kind of why there are some feelings like they can't be in a relationship. Gibbsy's kind of scared to be in a relationship with Claire and is really hesitant to start something with her. And we don't really know why until this book. When this talks about his trauma, I thought I knew what was coming, and I did pretty much know what was coming in this, but the way that I cried like someone in my family had died. Like this, absolutely bawling my eyes out. Thank goodness nobody was home because my husband would have been so concerned for me and would have been like, what is going on? What are you doing? Because of how absolutely just traumatic this was reading this. I felt like it gave so much insight and just so much depth and is something real that so many people go through. But this is definitely very, very hard to read. I would look up trigger warnings for this just because of how difficult it is, but I think that this is such a beautiful book. And I think Claire and Gibbsy will be getting a second book, and I am super excited to get into that because I definitely don't feel like their story is finished after this book. I can't wait to see where it goes after this. The next book we have is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Black. This is a YA kind of mystery thriller, and I absolutely loved this book. This book follows Pip, and she is kind of doing her like senior thesis, I guess, on this case that happened in her town where this girl was unalived, and then her boyfriend was the one that everyone kind of assumes did it, or he was accused of doing it, and he ends up unaliving himself as well. No one really knows the full story. They've kind of just accepted that her boyfriend was the one to commit this crime, and Pip thinks that there might be more to the story, so she teams up kind of with the younger brother of the boy who was accused, starts to investigate this case. And there were so many different times where I thought I knew who the person was, and I absolutely did not. This kept me on my toes so much. This was so suspenseful. I felt like for a YA, I don't think I've really read a YA mystery thriller before this, and I think that it did it so well. I would highly recommend. This is also such a fast-paced read. Next, we have The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I absolutely love this book again. This is YA, still kind of mystery thriller, and I feel like this is done so well. This book is kind of like a YA version of Criminal Minds, and while I'm not like a super huge Criminal Minds fan, I don't think I've ever sat down and purposefully watched it. I have kind of seen clips and episodes from it, and I feel like that definitely is the vibe that this book gives off, or this entire series gives off. I've only read the first two in this one, and while the second one was still really good, I think this one definitely tops it as being a 5-star. This book follows the Naturals program, which kind of takes these teenagers that are found to have affinities for being able to do certain things that can help out with cases. And so the FBI takes them in as part of this Naturals program. Our main character is Cassie, and she has an affinity for being a profiler. I just felt like this was so unique and unlike anything I've ever read. I've never seen this approach taken before. Again, for a YA, I felt like this was more suspenseful and like scarier than I thought it was gonna be, which granted, I do get scared quite easily. But overall, I think this is such a fun read. The next two books are The Women and the Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. These books were absolutely phenomenal. The Nightingale was the first book that I read by Kristen Hanna, and then Women was the second book I read by her, and I loved them both so much. I think that they were so well done. These books were my first kind of historical fiction that I've ever read. I thought that they were so entertaining, and that is coming from someone who does not like history at all. I typically don't find it very interesting, but I think that these books were so immersive that Kristen Hanna wrote them so well that I was entertained, I was enthralled the entire time that I was reading them. The Nightingale follows these two sisters who live in France during the time of World War II, and they are completely different. They don't get along with each other all that well. We also see kind of how the war ends up affecting them, and it affects them in vastly different ways, and the different stances that they take on different issues. I felt like it was so interesting to see how different they were and the different contributions that they were able to make. The story is so tragic and so beautiful. It has friendship in it, it has love, it has like perseverance. It has a lot of very sad things, of course, that happen in it as well, dealing with the time frame that it deals with. I would absolutely recommend this as a must read. I think that it was so touching. I would have a box of tissues nearby because I was bawling my eyes out in this book. And I think that Kristen Hanna just does historical fiction like nobody else. It is so immersive. Even if you don't like history or you've read historical fiction before and you didn't like it, I would still highly recommend that you pick this book up. The Nightingale was so good and so well done that I didn't think Kristen Hanna could top it. And then I read The Women. I don't know if I can truly pick a favorite between the two because both of them are so phenomenal, but they are both definitely within their own right 5-star reads. The Women follows Frankie, who comes from this war family. Her dad went to war before. Her brother is currently serving in the war, and so she has always kind of respected her dad, respected her brother. Her dad like honors all these war heroes in the family. He has like this wall of all different pictures of them and their contributions to the war, and so Frankie decides that what she needs to do is also sign up to go join the Vietnam War. That's what she does, and you get to see kind of her family's response to that, and then what she does as a nurse in Vietnam. This book was done so well. She ends up making these friends while she's there fighting that have this lifelong friendship. She ends up falling in love and getting to experience all these different things and seeing the horrors of war and what it was like being a nurse during the Vietnam War, particularly being a woman during the Vietnam War. That's just the first half of the book, which I thought surely that's going to be the most traumatic. And then in the second half, we see after the war when she comes back to the United States and how veterans were treated after the Vietnam War, how certain issues were dealt with. We learn so much about mental health. Female friendships that are in this book, I also thought were so well done. Seeing the way that they were constantly there for each other, uplifting each other, fighting for each other. Like even when the other one didn't necessarily want it, I thought that it was so beautiful. I think that every part of this was such a good learning experience. Again, these things are things that actual people went through, and I think that was one of the reasons why it was so touching. And lastly, we have the 19th and final 5-star read of the year, and that was Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco. Now, this whole series, again, like I said, for some of the other ones, I consider it to be a 5-star series. I thought that this book was so well done. This is another YA trilogy. This follows Amelia and Wrath is one of like the princes of hell basically, and Amelia is this witch, and it follows kind of a just continuation from the first book where they meet and they're like reluctant allies slash enemies to lovers, and we get to see them even more in that dynamic. This was just done so well. I was kicking my feet, I was giggling. I'm absolutely obsessed with this. This definitely upped the stakes a little bit more in this book. And I think that everything in this was done so well that I'm now so excited to pick up the sequel series. I think it's like the Throne of the Fallen series. I just ate up every single part of this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will love these books if you haven't picked them up yet and end up picking them up because of this. And I think that you absolutely will, because they were all so amazing. There's no books that I would recommend more. So if you don't have these on your TBR yet, definitely add them to some of the books that you have to read in 2025.